Hello, welcome. Today we've got a special guest, Mr. Bevan, joining us. We're going to chat about what the Aberdeen Chief Executive says about pensions. Football will come to the fore along with rugby, and the world's wealthiest cities by number of millionaires. Enjoy. Then those three little pigs.
You back from all dinner. I'll start there.
Did well on that, didn't you?
Three little pigs, yeah. There's three of us in the room today.
Three of us. No, that's what I meant. Not as in I was fat after my holiday.
I don't know about that.
Well, I know.
Is this recording?
Yeah. Welcome, Mr. Bevan.
Welcome.
Good Lord. Oh, how are you going?
Good. So it normally starts.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
And it goes downhill from here.
It goes down here from here. Yeah. It's
my cruise is actually quite good. There wasn't as much food eaten as I thought there would be.
I tell you what's quite funny. Your WhatsApp message delayed coming through, and one came through at like 10 o'clock in the morning, which was like literally darkness in the middle of the sea. And I thought somehow you hadn't docked that morning because your messages were coming through at like a weird kind of time.
That's because you were only hitting land or the 3 or 4G network at certain times, because I only had one Wi-Fi code. It was $176 for 4 days of Wi-Fi.
Dollars in France.
Oh, because it was Mr. Disney's cruise. Everything was in dollars. Yeah. Yeah.
On board was in dollars.
Walt wasn't there. He's dead.
What was on? Brilliant. What was the currency on board?
Dollars.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it's easier for them.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
French sea.
British sea, British port. Yeah. It was, everything is, even when you're paying.
Did you go very far? Did he just like drive you out of the port and then you kind of stopped in the middle and then charge you for 4 days of being on a Disney cruise about 100 yards from land?
No, we went up the Bristol Channel. No, we did. We went to La Rochelle, which Mr. Bevan will probably know of before. Did you ever play a game over there before?
Yeah, got absolutely pummeled as well.
All right.
Doesn't matter what team you play for, you get pummeled in La Rochelle.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say in the nice way, the parts that we saw weren't spectacular. The port was, well, the port is a port. The port is always horrible, but we didn't spend a huge amount of time there, but it didn't look very appealing city.
Remind me again where you're from.
Yeah. You got into it quick enough.
Rochelle.
Nothing wrong with Connacht. Okay.
Oh, that's very nice.
La Rochelle, yeah. Booked it already for next year again.
Oh, they gave you, don't they? That'll
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting off the boat.
Yeah.
For 24 hours to use it, probably.
48 hours. Yeah.
Same old. Scarcity.
Bilbao and La Coruña next year.
La Coruña, I've been there.
There we go.
Spain. Yeah.
Talking about what do you want to welcome the guest properly before I go into chatting about certain things?
Am I a guest? I just thought I'd park my car outside and come in for a biscuit.
That was it. He came in for a biscuit.
I got a microphone in front of my face.
He came in for a biscuit, a cup of tea, and look what happened.
5 biscuits later, I did see he threw the little packet away.
I did. They were nice.
There were 5 left in that pack on the pass to you.
There's 3.
If you're going to pick on me eating, you're going to have it back.
Well, he can introduce himself.
Absolutely.
My name is Trystan, and I'm from Trystan. Almost rhymes that, doesn't it?
How many years in professional sport?
25 now.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes me feel old, that.
And you've worked in the US of A, haven't you?
Started in the US of A,
Yeah.
student in Michigan State, which was phenomenal as a 20-year-old.
Are they one of the biggest
You've got
American football colleges?
That concept is a weird one to get your head around, because when you consider the size of America, the state of Michigan alone has got like 4 teams in it. So Michigan State, University of Michigan, Central Michigan University, and then potentially their Northwestern, which is technically in Chicago. So all 4 of those would attract 90,000 fans every weekend whenever they play. And the state of Michigan is about the size of Britain. You've got probably maybe 20 primary institutions in America as far as sport. And Michigan State are probably in the top 10, yeah.
And that's just university.
Wow.
University level. I mean, my ignorance when I went out there as an athlete was huge. Most universities there play on Saturdays and they get bigger crowds there than the NFL, which is on Sundays. Standard. So Spartan Stadium in Michigan State held, I think it's 93,000 people. It's been sold out every game for the last 20 years.
Where was the World Cup? In 94, they had
that was the Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
Oh,
that's
okay.
right. Yeah, I think that's University of California, Los Angeles. I think that is, yeah.
Because I saw something on Instagram, social media, or one of them the last day where, what did I say to you? What was the name of the college? I can't think of the name of it.
You're talking about
the song, The Sandman. They came out to that.
I think that's Nebraska. Or is it Tennessee or Alabama? Maybe, I don't know.
It was just mental. They were cutting to the stadium and all the crowd were just bouncing all that. It just looked like such a good atmosphere, and that must then push back onto the players themselves.
Yeah, the crazy thing about the NCAA is, which is the university sports system in America, is that they don't get paid at all. So in order to go to play for a university, where if you play in front of, there's a guy called Charles Woodson when I was in Michigan State, who was in I think he was in Nebraska. He was the main player of the year. And he'd have Nike chasing him down for $3 or $4 million contracts whilst he's still a student.
Wow.
But whilst he's still a student, he's got to pay to go to university. So he's playing in front of 90-odd thousand people. He's one of the most famous people in America. But until he finishes his degree, he's paying like everybody else to go to university. And then at that point, once he finishes college, he then gets the huge deals in the NFL, of course.
Do you know it's trying to keep yourself injury free then, isn't it?
Oh, 100%.
Wow.
100%.
You're not allowed to get paid then, is it? Or you
if you get paid, you get thrown off the course.
Really?
Craig, I'm not massively au fait with the compliance of the NCAA these days, but you're looking at, unless you're playing in a main university, you're not going to get drafted for the NFL.
Wow.
So that incentivizes you to stay in college then.
Wow.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and also where they've stepped up the next level is, how do I say this now? You could be a brilliant basketball player or brilliant NFL player, and then I'll just do a surfing degree in college or something like that. Now they have to have set degrees that you have to do in order to qualify for the sports teams, and you also have to maintain a certain level of grade point average, they call it. So you can't just phone in the degree; you've actually got to study.
Do you know when is it the same as uni here when you finish the last year in uni and you're on an American football team and there's 20, 25, 30, whatever amount on there, does everyone get drafted or it's not that way at all? It's only everyone gets put in there, but whether you get picked or not is up to the big franchises.
I went out there as an athlete. I had delusions of grandeur of maybe going to the Commonwealths or maybe going to the European Championship, something like that. I was never quick enough and never good enough. During my last year there, my track and field coach, who was herself an Olympic champion, Judy Brown-King, who won gold in Los Angeles in 400 hurdles, I think it was. She basically said, look, you're not quick enough. You're just not going to make the team next year, but you can hold a stopwatch and a whistle for me and help me coach. So as a part of that graduate assistantship scheme where you help all the sports and stuff, there's a few experiences with the football team, as they call it, the American football team. And there's 120 in an American football squad. There's 120, right? And say, for example, every year there's 120 in Michigan States. Maybe one every 3 years will get drafted to the NFL.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a couple of guys that I knew who were in classes with me. Chuck Buller, who played for LA Rams.
It'd have to be a Chuck.
It's got to be a Chuck Buller, isn't it? But there's a lot of my friends who were either track and field athletes or in the same in the same class as me, who would never make it as professional footballers or American footballers, but they would be on what's called the training squad. So one of them went to the Buffalo Bills, and he was basically a pad holder for the Buffalo Bills on probably $120,000 a year.
What's that?
Nice money if you can get it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Wow.
So 1 in 120.
No, 1 in 360.
1 in
3 teams.
One every 3 or 4 years. That was the rate when I was there.
To get to elite performance level.
And when you consider the amount of players that play in the NFL, the majority of them don't last more than 2 years.
Really?
before somebody else comes in and takes their place. Actually, this conversation goes all around full circle. So you were just about in La Rochelle, and my very good friend who is head of performance in Stade Rochelet Rugby, who won the European title for the last 2 years, is a gentleman called Philippe Gardon, who used to play for the Carolina Panthers and for the Washington, they were called the Redskins at the time. Obviously, they're not anymore. So he's French, Philippe, and I believe he's the first ever Frenchman to play in the NFL. And he played maybe 2 or 3 years for the Panthers, a couple of years for the Redskins, and still has to earn a living afterwards. Like obviously, he's earning a very good living in La Rochelle at the moment, I'm sure. But it's not a case of you've made it the NFL, so therefore you can put your feet up for the rest of your life. Yeah. That just happens in financial planning.
Yeah,
right. We wish.
Do you know what? Talking about that, look, I'm going to go on to stuff I've wrote down on the Times yesterday or today. How do you say it now? You know how it is Aberdeen? They've changed their name. It's Aberdeen or Aberdeen.
It's still Aberdeen,
but they just made it
just written in like 4
silly
letters,
and they spent 3.6 million or whatever it was on rebranding.
Good job.
The chief says the pension contributions must double, so the 8% is not sufficient.
It's not. We've always said that.
16% he wants to put it to.
Yeah. Well, he's not ever saying that, though, is he?
Imagine 16% of his wage.
Well, they probably put him more than 16% in his pension, let's be fair. He is the CEO.
But it's meant like an outsider for you.
To spend all that money on marketing.
Nearly a fifth of your wage having to go on a pension for the future, which we've always said, like work Monday to Thursday and Friday is the money you put for the future you. But I can't imagine most people, one, could afford their lifestyle now by having an increase of an extra 8% on costs.
Well, unless they make it mandatory, they're not going to do it, are they?
True.
People just opt out. Because that's just the mentality of the UK, sadly.
There's no point in talking rugby to this man here. So there was something in about football the other day. The headline was, in football's choice between morals and money, there's only one winner. So all of a sudden, you throw that out to the two of you and you can have your rant about how bad football is and there's no morals in football and all that.
I've got a nice little anecdote for that.
Go on.
I did a presentation. This comment itself is probably about maybe 2 years old now. I did a presentation a while ago where what does it take for a team to win? And one of the facts was, if you look at the Premier League football and what was then, still is the Gallagher Premiership in rugby, and the Champions League. So 3 different sports, 2 different sports, 3 different leagues.
Yeah.
Since 2015, how many of the teams that have won the Champions League for the last 6 years, the Premiership in England for the last 3 years, and also the Premier League in England for the last 3 years, how many of those have failed the Financial Fair Play Awards?
Oh.
Have either failed the Financial Fair Play or have been, obviously in Saracens' case, punished and sent back to the
All the
Champions.
Premiership teams.
Every single one of the Premiership teams.
Yeah.
Premier League team. How many years gone back?
I think it goes back to 2015. I'm putting myself forward to be shot down here, but I think this is correct.
Liverpool didn't. Man City did. Who won the Champions League? Real Madrid. I don't know if they failed it. They probably just got...
No, basically the answer is all of them.
Really?
Every single one of them has had some kind of sanction.
Because we probably would have been here for an hour.
Yeah, you would have.
For every single team.
Yeah.
I'm in an hour over whether they probably failed it. I was inclined to say that's probably right.
Yeah, I think all of them. Maybe COVID has slightly changed that.
Like salary caps and all that.
Salary caps, financial fair play.
So there is salary caps in football, is there?
Well, no, they've got this sort of...
They've got a fair play.
Yeah, was the right and proper test and all that kind of stuff. And
it's difficult to understand.
Oh,
yeah. You're only, I think, you're only allowed to pay a certain percentage of your revenue as salary.
Right,
so I think it's about 60% of your revenue is salary. But I think in the case
rugby's different though. The rugby's actually a salary cap, isn't it?
There is, yeah.
Yeah, they used to have marquee players in England and all that as well.
But for years in England, didn't they go, and again, if my brother-in-law is listening, he'll correct me, like Man City were short some money before, I think, weren't they? And they went, how can we get around this? Oh, we'll rename the stadium the Etihad. Our owners will just throw some money in. We'll rename it the Etihad, and basically they didn't give them a loan. It's another way of generating revenue through sponsorship. So you can get away with it, I think. Marketing
and PR. Just another line in the budget.
But the numbers coming out, the summer transfers were £2.3 billion spent on summer transfers this year in the Premier League alone. So just transfers and that's just 20 teams. But it generates...
Do these teams actually make a profit?
Brighton do. Yeah. They made 200 million profit or something.
Really?
Yeah, they sold a shed load of players this year and they've made us...
He sold a lot of players.
Well, yeah, that's the design.
So they sold the players, all the cars, all the fitness equipment, the ground, the land. No?
That's working capital, isn't that? That's just like pens and staplers.
But now they don't have a team to play football with.
No, they buy in. They buy in. Like, for example, they sold 2 guys to Chelsea, I'm sure, for nearly 200 million.
They could have signed you now.
And they signed a guy from Ireland, from Shamrock Rovers. Yeah. And he's 18, and now...
Is that actually real?
I was wondering how long this conversation will get around to the fact that he scored 3 goals over the weekend. What's his name again?
Ferguson. What was even nicer is the papers are touting him up to play for England. Because his father is English and moved to Meath in Ireland. But if you listen to him, he's an 18-year-old. He goes, why would I want to play for England?
Yeah, exactly.
He said, well, you can follow Declan Rice and Jack Grealish and Harry Kane, who are all basically of Irish origin. But anyways, Premier League generates 8 billion into the economy, and 4 billion of that goes to taxes. So it's not all, morally they might be wrong in certain ways, but they do add a lot of money into the economy and jobs. And that fell on deaf ears.
Jobs?
Well, the elite football supports 100,000 jobs. No, all the
new key people.
A bit like the rugby. Look at Mr. Bevan there. All of the jobs in the background, not the 15 or 11 players that go out on the field. All the back office staff, the catering staff, the hospitality. 100,000 jobs.
Wasn't Australia's part-time though? So.
I know Swansea, because Swansea were in the Premier League for a decade, I think, wasn't it? The effect of having the Premier League in Swansea was huge on the local economy.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
And the deprivation of such now is massive the other side.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the championship playoff game is the £100 million game, isn't it? That's how much you're going to make, even if you fall down the following year for the club itself. Really? Is that amount of money, excluding where the club is based in terms of hotel and food and drink and people coming to stay and watch matches and stuff like that. Because realistically, here in Cardiff, if Cardiff just play in the championship and they've got, I don't know, Barnsley or someone, you won't get people staying. But if they go up to the Premier League and they've got Liverpool and Man City, they'll come down and people might come from that are Cardiff based.
You'll have people who will come down who wouldn't normally go to some of the games.
And they'll spend the money down here. So it does generate more money into the economy. Nice. Last thing I only have down here, I was going to chat. This is interesting. Even though it probably isn't. The world's wealthiest cities by number of millionaires. There's 345,600 millionaires in one city in the world. It's the number one wealthiest city.
How many?
345,600 millionaires.
That's got to be like Abu Dhabi or something, isn't it?
Well, I'm not telling you. You have to... It's an American city.
New York.
Yeah.
I
345.
was
going to say Rubina for a second, but yeah.
London is 4th.
Is it really?
Yeah. But where is Singapore, Los Angeles, Tokyo, San Francisco, Beijing, Shanghai, Sydney? There is no...
What are we talking, millionaires?
Yeah.
That. Well, millionaires leads on the high performance, doesn't it? And we got a man here who knows about high performance. How do you classify high performance?
Oh, crumbs. Very good question. Someone, either an entity or an individual that's reached probably as close to the ceiling in their space that they can hope to get to.
That could be anything.
That could be anything.
Sport, isn't it?
Do you know what? I'll take that back because what I just mentioned there is achievement. Like I think there's a bit of a sort of, you can't go online these days or look at anything involving high performance and there's like 1,000 definitions for them.
Yeah. Whether
it's on podcasts or books or sort of reels and stuff. And I suppose a high performer is someone who shows traits of someone who's repeatably good at something. Shane or any three of us can go to a golf course and hit a lucky shot and have a hole in one.
Yeah.
Which by definition is high performance, but the repeatability aspect of it, certainly for me anyway, isn't there. There's one sort of misnomer that I think is quite interesting, where people always say about, oh, if you trust the process enough, you'll end up being a high performer, or whatever the way to define that. And I always think that high performance needs to be measurable. It needs to be something that, I don't know, if you take a swimmer, for example, just because they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they go to the pool and, they throw the laps in, that doesn't necessarily equate to, you do that often enough, you'll end up being an Olympic gold medalist. You have to be able to break down the nature of the event. You have to find out what the standards are, and you have to be able to do those. And not only able to do those, but do those under the stresses of expectation, competition, general sort of life stresses. So a high performer, I think, is someone who can repeat in a certain area or field, repeat something of a very high level
on a constant basis.
Under various forms of stress.
Can anyone do it?
Oh, we were talking about this earlier before we came in.
Can it be taught?
I'm not quite sure if it can be taught. It can be experienced by a learner, and I mean, you're talking down, like Matthew Syed obviously wrote the book Bounce, about 10,000 hours of practice, and then that's kind of been changed to, you need more deliberate practice, and the best way of actually getting more deliberate practice is getting rid of mediocrity and all this kind of stuff. So there's various sort of ways of applying thought leadership to how it makes you a better performer. If you look at someone like, we're in Cardiff now, if you look at someone like Geraint Thomas, didn't start cycling till relatively late on in his career, but obviously shows the self-awareness, the ability to sort of repeat his behaviours and performances. He's way past his prime age-wise in sport now. He's come first, second and third in the Tour de France. So in my mind, he is by some distance the best Welsh sportsman in history. But the things that kept him going during his career of elevating high performance, he still shows them now, even though he's basically no longer the main rider. So it's more a case of having those qualities, but having those traits to underpin them as well.
So I imagine if you look pre his career, he wasn't just on the lash every Saturday night and sat in McDonald's eating food. He probably showed those traits all the way through his life.
I don't know him to be able to say yes or no to that.
I imagine he probably was.
Yeah, and the higher, I mean, there's a great metaphor, the higher up in the mountain you go, there's less, the air is thinner. What that means is the higher up in going standards, there's much, much less of a difference between winning and losing. It becomes very, very, very thin. The air becomes very thin. So Geraint Thomas could at some point decide to cycle in a local event here after having 24 straight nights on the razzle dazzle and probably still win it by some distance because of his area of where he performs. But the higher up in competition you go, the more you get found out.
And you said earlier it has to come back to training and planning. I think it was Mark Cavendish was saying before, isn't it? They don't always do 120k cycle day on, day out because they don't have the hours. It's that time, and they train in the correct manner. Not just training for training's sake, because you can train and train incorrectly. They're training in the correct format.
Yeah, I mean, you can train for quantity, you can train for intensity, you can train for longevity, you can train for just improving the sort of technical aspects of what you're looking at. And
that's all aspects of life, not just a sporting member, even
no, exactly that.
All of your life.
No, precisely. I mean, one of the metaphors in sport, which is quite good, and this was something like, obviously I'm not saying this because you're Irish, but Leinster have been, by some sort of distance, probably the most consistently good team in rugby for long enough to be able to say that's as close to a dynasty as you'll get. They're almost like the Man United of rugby. Man United, what they were in the 90s, Leinster have been since the 2000s.
Really?
Right?
Were Toulon not a better...
They had a flashpoint of 4 years where they won Europe in 4 years, but it wasn't built on anything except for potentially recruitment. Leinster, by the virtue of the fact that they've got a brilliant system around Dublin as far as all the schools, all the talent, you've got to give it to them. They've created it themselves. Yeah,
but there's a monster man trying to crash that dynasty over in France.
Okay. Yeah, that's very true. But it was in sort of the same metaphors we were talking about earlier. Leinster, on a good day, they're a 10 out of 10.
On a regular basis?
No, so just on a good day. So they turn up on a Saturday, they play, everything goes well, they're a 10 out of 10. They turn up and they have a shocker, they're still a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Whereas some teams that I've coached in the past, I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, some teams have had a higher threshold of 9 and they've had a lower threshold of 6. So, I mean, one team that I've coached, at a good day, we'd be a 6.5, 7. But by God, we got the potential to be a 2. Like, so when you watch these scores on a weekend where flipping heck, Leinster have absolutely pumped, let's say, I don't know, I'm picking a name out of thin air here. They've pumped Biarritz 59-0 or whatever it is. Well, Leinster have probably operated at a 9 out of 10 level, and Biarritz have probably operated at a 3 out of 10 level. Where sport gets interesting, and this is where the metaphor for life goes as well, is when you've got people who've got really high levels of performance thresholds, and the difference between their best and their worst is small. So you can still have a shocking day, but still be very good.
So, some guy that works in Leinster, I saw the last day, he works on the Samoan national team as well. Can't remember who it was, but he said how good are Ireland, because they had a friendly challenge game last week, and he went, that is just an elite Leinster team, he said, about the Irish team.
Yeah, but
most people do that at World Cup. Don't they end up doing? They're part of a club team, and then in the World Cup they do some consultancy for some of these international
coinage.
sites. I've seen
it's
it.
a nice gig, that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
fly in for 6 weeks, fly out. Help them, educate them in some format. To twist something.
Because I know somebody when there's an analyst who won as well. Which I mean, they kind of get that. But obviously, they didn't have that, I guess.
Yeah,
ability to analyse games.
Like what Britain is doing very well. I include Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England in that. Is the analysis and the sort of the crucible of thought in rugby is quite sophisticated. So you've got real top level analysts, really good sort of practitioners as coaches and S&C guys and medics and stuff. And the majority of them have worked in a real high pressure environment, such as the Premiership in England or the URC and stuff. And it ends up churning out, you get the experience of having your philosophy tested against the league table, which is always very, very tough. And then you come through that, and then it's part of the reason, like Italy are improving without a single doubt. And like my dad was telling me years and years ago, France didn't join the Six Nations until the 30s or 40s, I believe. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I'm going to say the 7. I thought it was the 70s.
No, it took France a good 35 years to become good.
It was Italy who came in around about that.
Italy came in 2000, didn't they?
2000.
Yeah, France. You're not going to Google it.
You boys chat there. You boys chat away there.
You're Irish. You're still on Alta Vista, aren't you?
Well, I don't mean about those different levels and forms. Because I guess Wales is a bit like that, and they can be brilliant, but they can also be absolutely horrendous and somebody put 100 points on them.
Shane, I think you better take an answer, mate.
What's that? All I heard is Wales put 100 points on them.
They could do.
On who?
You don't listen then, do you?
No, I wasn't listening. That's why Trystan said.
He was Googling to see when France joined the Six Nations. Or 5 Nations, obviously.
Yeah, the 5 Nations.
But the point I'm getting at, France took 35 to 40 years to actually become competitive and then become very, very good.
1931.
Yeah. Was it really that? Okay. Yeah. And then, so Italy are having a little bit of a sort of, should they be in the Six Nations, all this kind of stuff. They need a few generations of players to come through and to learn from the previous one. Currently now, if you're an 8 or 9-year-old boy in Italy, or what sport shall I go into? Shall I watch Juventus or Inter Milan? Or, hang on a second, the Italian national team are actually doing pretty well. So it'll create a cascade effect where more players will want to play rugby. And that takes time. Like you can genuinely see in 20 years' time, Italy probably competing or even winning the Six Nations.
So here's one for you two boys as Welsh people. What's priority in Wales now? Because for 15 years maybe, the rugby was far the most dominant sport. Then all of a sudden Bale, Ramsey and all these guys brought through the football, and even though you had Giggs and Mark Hughes and Bowen and Neville Southall on them in the late 80s, 90s, it didn't seem to be as popular as rugby or as successful. I think football took over for a short while, but what's going to push through now? If you're saying the kids in Italy are going to be watching the Italian team, what are kids going to push through in Wales?
I think rugby will still always be the strongest sport.
Is that just because it's interwoven in society?
I reckon though. I mean, I want to say yes because I'm a bit of a sort of romantic when it comes to all that kind of stuff. Because I know from the area I'm from, rugby was dominant and all that kind of stuff, working class. But I can only judge it by my own son's experience now. I'm a touchline dad for the first time ever. Like, yes, of course, my son watches international rugby and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He's far more interested in Erling Haaland, far more interested in Man City than anything else around here. And I think it was an interesting case study there. Like, Wales were excellent in rugby in the 70s, not great in football. Both teams had a real challenging period in the 80s and 90s, not particularly good in anything, really. And that was the sort of the area that we all grew through, was watching football in well, same with Ireland, with you, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Ireland and Wales in the 80s and 90s were particularly struggling in rugby and in football. So we had nothing really to attach ourselves to emotionally.
No, that's right.
But then you can use that example that in Ireland everyone supports, Man United or Liverpool. There's other teams. Well, there's friends of mine that have West Ham and Ipswich, but they were out of Europe. They weren't taking part in European Cups. They weren't really successful, but still lots of players and people supported them. So even though you are not as successful, there was still loads of people supporting them in a different country. So it kind of goes against the chat that we're having here, that if you're not successful, people might not support you.
I don't know.
Gaelic football and rugby, to me, are in the two different countries, are interwoven in society. In every school ground in Ireland, there's a Gaelic football pitch. In primary school and that. And it almost seems to be the same here, that, you go out from a big city, all of the small schools and stuff like that all seem to have a rugby pitch attached to it, because that's society is built around that, and the local rugby club.
Is there a football pitch?
Yeah.
The school I went to, we had a football pitch. We kind of had a football team, but it was basically the rugby players playing football in reality, because it wasn't really, I don't know, we're talking 20 odd years ago now, so I don't know how that's changed. Maybe that school now does have a better football side than it does a rugby side.
It's one you could debate, I suppose, for a long, long time. I suppose it's the 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old kids that are the ones that will funnel down to success, because they'll follow success more so than history, I presume.
Yeah, I don't think history really matters to people anymore. People have got goldfish attention spans all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like, sadly now, watching Barry John and Phil Bennett and these guys, I think we've all got to accept, I'm 48 now, we've all got to accept that even those amazing moments of sport are now going to have to be snapshotted into 7-second Instagram clips. That's how people remember them now.
Yeah.
I used to watch the Crowning Years VHS, like spend an hour and a half every Sunday afternoon. Like, I was immersed in that stuff. But now, like, if someone watches a reel on a phone for 10 seconds, you're lucky, aren't you?
But it's funny though, then you flick that over to Netflix and they'll have 8 episodes about golf on some of these programs. So, and that's where it goes then full circle, in the fact that
but they're all segmented, aren't they?
But we're now turning something which could be a film into an hour and a half thing into basically 12 hours.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. Our attention spans are already good. We're suddenly having all these programs coming out now about, Mark Cavendish. That was the TV.
Yeah. But like you said with the attention span, the golf, I think it goes to, let's say it'll spend a few minutes with McIlroy here and he's chancing, and then it goes to another, it cuts to another thing, and then another thing. Over the course of 50 minutes, it could be cutting back and over loads of times. There we go.
Do you know who Thelma Schoonemaker is? She's Martin Scorsese's editor, right? So Martin Scorsese's won, 3 or 4? No, he hasn't. He's won 1 or 2 Oscars. Obviously one of the best sort of filmmakers all the time. But Thelma Schoonemaker, who's the woman who does the editing for him, has won like 6 Oscars. And her gift is effectively, she gets all the content of Scorsese films and she cuts the film and makes the film feel like his vision, right?
Wow.
So The Irishman, obviously, which was panned by critics and all that kind of stuff. I think she still won an Oscar for editing, but she made the conscious choice of making it in a 3.5-4 hour film, because she'd already anticipated people no longer go to the cinema. It's now, people will binge watch 3 or 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon. We can actually pivot the other way and make really long films with more dialogue. And I think she is genuinely, even though she's probably close to 80 years of age now, she's probably got her finger on the pulse a lot more than other people do. She probably reads the room going, now in a second, this is what people do now.
It's true.
And some people are good at that, aren't they? They just read their audience and they learn their audience and so on and so forth. And that's why they become exceptional in their field.
Yeah.
Which comes back to high performing.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll say thank you to Mr. Bevan, and we'll go and find some more biscuits for him.
Easy now. You owe me a cup of tea, come on now.